Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session on data space for media. I will just start sharing my screen. Okay, here we are. The idea for today's session is to give you a bit an overview into the topic of data spaces and then the particular topic of a data space for media. I will start by giving an introduction on what these data spaces are, where the data space for media fits, and some related initiatives. And then after me, two other speakers, Lucille from the EBU and Aldrin from the Media Data Space Consortium, will give more insights into how reflections and feasibility studies around this data space for media are going. And after that, in the second half, we have several speakers lined up with related initiatives that could become part of a future data space for media. Just something about myself, just one slide. I'm Mike Maton. I'm working for VRT, which is the public service media organization serving the Dutch-speaking community in Belgium. It's a company with a portfolio of television channels, radio stations, digital presence. You see some of our numbers and some of our strategic goals in this slide. Being relevant, digital transformation, bringing reliable information, stimulates culture and creativity, dare to innovate, that's what we also do, and keeping the media ecosystem together. So these strategic goals quite well align with what we do in our work here around this data space. I'm working in the innovation department of VRT, which is a team of around 35 people, where I'm responsible for our international collaborations with the innovation department.
Mike, we can't see it in full screen, so.
Oh, I will try again. This should be better.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, some backgrounds. I only have a few minutes, so I only briefly touch some of the relevant items and initiatives here around this data space concept. The background is the Digital Europe program, which is a European program funded by the European Commission to foster the uptake of digital technologies by businesses, citizens, public administrations. It's a program that encompasses a total budget of around 7.5 billion in 5 areas: supercomputing, AI, data and cloud, cybersecurity, advanced skills, and also the acceleration of technologies through digital innovation hubs. For these data spaces, they are actually located in this part on AI, data, and cloud. And if you look here, this is a zoom in on this AI, data, and cloud program. Also here, there are several initiatives. There are the data spaces themselves, which I'll address in a minute. There is some support mechanisms to support the data spaces. There is a topic on cloud to edge, an AI on demand platform, and also support to realize testing and experimentation facilities. And these data spaces are actually spaces to share data between stakeholders across different verticals in Europe. So there is the media one, so the European Commission will fund several ones across these verticals, and also one in media to be opened very soon. The data spaces are basically a part of the European data strategy, where a data space is a decentralized infrastructure for trustworthy data sharing and exchange in data ecosystems based on commonly agreed principles. So this is the basic definition of a data space. You can read more about this vision they have in this European strategy for data. And several organizations are actually working on relevant initiatives towards the realization of these data spaces. This is a picture from the International Data Spaces Association, which is trying to standardize and to create a reference architecture for the creation of data spaces, where they identify different roles. You have data owners and data providers who are not necessarily the same organizations. On the other side of the chain, you have the data consumers and the data users. And then in the middle, there are service providers, app store providers, service providers, and some federators, which are dealing, for instance, with logging the transactions into the data space. And the idea of this International Data Space Association is to standardize and to create reference architecture for realizing this. This is an infographic of their work, where they try to explain a little bit the concept for a data space, which is basically a standardized, open, federated environment where data owners, data users can connect and realize value together through this data space. One of the data spaces that will be launched by the European Commission is as already said, is the data space for media. Right now, there is a lot of work ongoing into an exploration and feasibility studies into a data space for media that will hopefully eventually conceptualize in a real data space, an operational data space in Europe. Some of the topics that are currently under study are search for use cases and applications, and together with that also the commercial models for those, governance models for a data space, as that's also not a very easy challenge to solve. Standardizing the infrastructure and the reference architecture. There is a link to Gaia X, which is also a European initiative to try to standardize the infrastructure you need to create data applications and data spaces and so forth. So here are some of the relevant organizations and pointers. As said, there is not much time to go in detail here, so it's just briefly touching the topic. There is this European Media Data Space Consortium, which is doing a feasibility study, investigating into existing initiatives, explore compensation solutions, governance models, and so forth. Adrian in the next presentation will give more details on the work they are doing. There is the Gaia X initiative, which I hope many of you have heard of in the context of data spaces, which is a European initiative to standardize infrastructure for federated data spaces. And then there is this International Data Space Association, which is a coalition of 130 companies that share a vision on the creation of data spaces. One of the major things they have done is the realization of this reference architecture, which they want to push forward as a global standard for international data spaces and interfaces. You see links to the websites. There is a huge load of interesting documents to read on these websites with more information. So this is a general introduction into the topic. Colleagues after me will go into a bit more details about the work on media data spaces. I'll just finish with an overview of the program. So Adrian will follow with the work from the Media Data Space Consortium and the feasibility study they are performing. After that, Lucille will present some work the EBU is doing on use cases and also introduce work that has been done in the Gaia X Hub in France. And then in the second part, we have a lineup of speakers who are working on several projects all across Europe on related initiatives that could form the base or that could become a part of a data space in the future. So there's Meinol from DPA on the Drive project, Lucille on the news project at EBU for trustworthy news. There is Nikos from ATC and CERT on the European Digital Media Observatory. Robin from SwissText will talk about Mediaverse. Hans Nicolas will talk about Tamis. Alexander will talk about the CREA project. And then finally, Jérôme from Monarch will talk about the EWA projects. All relevant topics from many different use cases that's related to it. Unfortunately, one of the speakers, Adeline Bevan from Sachem, was going to present the Media Hub projects for collecting and distributing rights in audiovisual media. Unfortunately, this morning she let us know that she's no longer available due to some personal problems at home. So we will skip that presentation for today. So then I will quickly give the word to Adrian from CARSA to introduce us to the Media Data Space Consortium.
Hi, Mike. So thank you very much for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen. I hope everybody can see it correctly and can hear me correctly. So as you said, I'm going to speak today on the behalf of the Media Data Space Consortium. So we're working on the feasibility studies to assess the feasibility of the development of a media data space in Europe. So the consortium involves Interrela, CARSA, which I'm part of, K11, SQS, and the Europe Media Labs. We work, this study is done by the commissioned by DG Connect. So the objective of the study, as I mentioned, is a feasibility study. So we want to assess what are the requirements from a business, legal, and technical perspective to develop a media data space, which involve a series of questions: how to make data portability feasible, what are the architecture, etc. How can we build the coalition of organization to create the initial association? How can we create the correct incentive to convince company to join the initiative and to make the initiative sustainable in the future? So we already reached the point where we developed the first interim report that is being submitted to DG Connect. I'm going to present some of this conclusion, not the entirety of it, and then I will move to after that to the presentation of the next step, because we are currently running 3 workshops for the co-design of the governance structure of a media data space. So firstly, we started, and this is Interrela mainly that led this part, by the identification of use cases for a media data space. This was more than simply defining a list of potential use case for a data space. It was really the idea of putting the fact that the data space needs to be useful for the ecosystem at the center of the approach. What matters is not just to exchange some data. We need to define what data are going to be exchanged, why are they going to be exchanged for, and how can we make the data space impactful for the ecosystem. We are currently in the process of assessing the possibility to develop new use cases using artificial intelligence solutions. But on top of this, the use case also gives us another important information, which is what type of information do you need to share to achieve this? Because at the core of the data space is the data and the licensing agreement to exchange information and to make the data space possible and feasible in the first place, which involves technical, business, and legal dimensions. So for data space architecture, you basically have 2 main types of architecture. One of them is data is anonymized and aggregated, and participants can receive the aggregation result, but they do not have access to the data that are still identified. Another architecture is a marketplace architecture for bilateral exchanges that can be monetized or through barter. We also developed a typology of governance structure, but unfortunately, I don't think I will have time to go into details. The idea behind the governance structure typology is really to highlight that at the core of the governance structure is really the initial coalition. Who was involved from the start and how did they find the agreement? What I mean by that is if you take AG Data Hub, for example, in France, it's a private company with an anonymous society status. Yet they issue shares and they are shareholders. But precisely the system of shares was created to provide to small farmers in France more control. They came to create they created a holding, and the holding is the main shareholder of the initiative. So the status in itself of the legal status, the architecture of the body is not necessarily the most important to define the control of the ecosystem. It's really what was the initial coalition and why did they choose this architecture, and then how was it adapted to the need of the ecosystem. Another important thing, as we mentioned, is that we want to create the incentive and make the initiative sustainable, which involves the question of a business model. There are 2 dimensions of a business model for a data space. The first one is to make the initiative interesting and impactful for participants, which involve you typically have 3 types of gain that can be expected from the participation to a data space. The first one is the operational efficiency, which is especially important for aggregation anonymization data space, because usually you cannot necessarily have a marketplace on this architecture, and therefore the main gain to convince participants to join is to convince them that the gain they will have in their daily operation will outweigh the cost and the risk of joining the initiative. Another type of gain that is more related to the marketplace architecture is the bilateral exchanges that can be either monetized through smart contracting, etc., or can be done through barter economy. The mobility data space, for example, is a good example of this initiative. And then another source of income, which is very depending on the sector and the final architecture taken by the data space, can be more regular source of income. If you have, for example, a data space where you connect a B2C interface, which is, I must say at the moment, not a very frequent thing, but can completely be envisioned in the future. You can have other source of income. You can monetize content data, you can monetize news, etc. And then you have the other part of the business model, which is making the initiative sustainable. So far, we have 4 main types of system to make to basically pay for the daily operation of the data space. The first one is the subscription. You can have a simple subscription where you pay per month. You can have a freemium where when you join and share data, it's free, but if you want advanced function using analytics and AI, you have to pay a fee. And then you have membership. When joining actually and paying the subscription gives you actually some ownership on membership rights. The 3 other models, so you have commission-based, you take a commission on the data that is exchanged, or you have sponsors. So you have either private or public authorities that sponsor the initiative. Typically, it is something that is needed at the launching phase and at the scaling phase. At these 2 stages, usually you need a sponsor to finance these two moments that are difficult and very expensive, and also bring some specific hurdle, because you have to bring the initial coalition. And when you scale up, you have the difficulty of increasing costs that will increase rapidly, but it can take time to have new income to make the initiative sustainable. And then you have the mix, which is actually the norm. Usually initiatives to fund and to make their initiatives and their infrastructure sustainable, they mix the different sorts of income. So a good example for this in Ecklick in Germany, which is in the chemical industry. You pay a subscription, but they also take a commission on the exchange information. So this was a short summary of some of the key findings that we had for the interim conclusion. We are in the stage of doing 3 workshops to develop the governance structure of the future data space that we want to co-design. As I mentioned, it is especially important because the initial coalition that is present in the data space at the beginning is going to define the level of control of the coalition and of the ecosystem over the data space initiative. And therefore, it is a stage that needs to be co-designed in close collaboration with the stakeholder from the ecosystem. So we will have 3 workshops. The first one will be to discuss general governance mechanism, and then the 2 next one will be one for use case using usage data for an aggregation anonymization data space. Another one will be for marketplace architecture using content data. So when you define and design a governance structure, the difficulty is that you have a series of building blocks: business, organizational, operational, technological. And not only you have different blocks that have to be systematically thought, but on top of this, they are all interrelated. And it's sometimes very difficult to define this interrelation and to find a framework, a methodology to develop an impactful and functioning governance structure, especially because the governance structure, it does not only involve the managing body that can take different legal status, it also involves a data agreement, term and condition, consortium agreement. The names and the number of contracts signed by data space can vary. Some of them will have one that will involve all these dimensions, but these are the key dimensions. So how to define a governance structure is by taking a step backward, by going back to the building blocks of a data space itself, which involve the exchange protocol, the authorization, the metadata, etc. And once you have these different building blocks being neatly separated, because as I said, the governance structure involves all these different elements, because everything is related at the end. If you want to have an impactful and efficient governance structure, once you have this, what you can do and what the consortium is actually doing and what we will discuss during the workshop number 2 and 3 is what we call an industry agreement. So an industry agreement, I'm not going to go into the details of all of this, but basically it defines all the key technical and legal requirements that a consortium or a coalition will have to agree upon if they want to create a data space. So basically, if you want to create a data space, you have a manual that tells you the industrial agreement, you have to start this, there, and there, and you have to fulfill all these conditions, and you have to find an agreement about all these different dimensions. So this is what we will be developing. So I did not include all the conditions on the clauses on this slide, because I did not want it to overload it. But basically, the idea of the discussion will be to do this. We will have the opportunity to delete some clauses, to modify clauses that exist, or add new ones. And then on top of this, the clauses that are considered as being especially important and key for the definition of the governance structure, starting by the use case. As we said, that's the goal, is to start, but what type of data do we exchange? And how do we make data exchangeable? How do we make it feasible? And how do we make it acceptable by all parties? So to do this, we have to define very clear use and reuse rights for each type of data set, usage data and content data. So for this type of point, we will have an in-depth discussion. And once this is done, then basically the industry will have basically a manual on how to develop a data space for the media industry. With two types of architecture being covered by that manual. And on top of this, we will have prepared and paved the way for the next step of the study by clearly identifying the key legal and technical requirements for the development of such a data space. And we will also have linked this to monetization scheme and clear use case for the future of the study. In case you have any other question about this, please feel free to contact me either on my email address or using the project page on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Aldrin, for your presentation. Just for the information of the audience, if you have questions, you can always address them to us through the chat function on the B2Match platform. I am keeping an eye on there, so if there are questions, please forward them there. I have, in the meantime, one quick question for Aldrin. You mentioned these workshops that are going to take place. If people are interested to join them, can they apply to participate in these workshops, or are they closed to a restricted audience?
We will prepare the registration in the coming days. So the first one will definitely be open to the entire ecosystem. Mm-hmm. The two next one will be more focused on data. So they will have, we will seek to have a more limited number of participants, like 20 for each, because we want to have more open discussion on some point. It can be technical because we go to data. So the first one is just definitely open to the entire ecosystem. Number 2 and 3 are a bit more restricted.
Okay, thanks a lot.
But for sure, if you are interested in joining, please contact us and we will put you on the list.
All right, thank you, Aldrin. Then I think it's time to switch to Lucille Verbaren from the EBU, who is going to give some insights into the EBU work on this topic.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everybody. I will share my screen. Okay. So, hi, so I'm Lucille Verbaren. I'm part of the Technology and Innovation Center at the European Broadcasting Union in Geneva. And I coordinate activities related to data space and cybersecurity. And I'm the lead at Gaia X for the media vertical at the Data Space Business Committee. So just a few words on EBU. So EBU is the world's leading alliance for public service media. We are composed of 115 members organizations that operates TV channels, radio, in total in 56 countries and 159 languages. And we reach an audience of more than 1 billion people across Europe. So EBU is really a firm believer of the importance of developing data space. We are leading the media vertical group at Gaia X, working closely with many actors in the industry. We organize events to raise awareness and facilitate the link between different data sharing initiatives. The goal is really to help define data space at European level, find synergies and build consortiums. So we are listing today use cases. There is a first draft document that has been initiated by the cultural and creative industry group, which at Gaia X French Hub. So I will explain that in the next slide. And we are looking for enriching this document with more use cases coming from across Europe. We want to define, to identify if there are any specific requirements for a media data space compared to the traditional data space, classical transversal building blocks, I would say. And we want to start building consortiums of users for this data space. So all the logos that you can see on the right are from companies that took part of the different events that we are organizing to define and work on this data space creation. So as I said, we are working very closely with the group Cultural and Creative Industry at Gaia X French Hub. Their scope is a bit larger, I would say, as they include visual arts, music, performing arts, press, and so on. They have been created 1 year ago, and now there are 33 from private and public sector. And as I said, they published a first version of their positioning paper, which includes around 15 use cases from French industry. And there's an English version already available. As I said, we are now looking to add other use cases from Europe. And the objective now is really to initiate some concrete projects based on these use cases. And on board new members and also service providers that could help implement these projects. So the work is also completely aligned with what we do at EBU. That is to say, to really define the different conditions for the creation of the data space and give it a European perspective. So we are now really discussing with 3 main type of stakeholders, I would say. So the first one is really with specialists working on news, fact-checking, deepfake detection. The second is more about the people that are working on audience analysis, specialists that are also developing recommendation and personalization tools. And finally, people involved in media asset management and right management. So on the news side, we discussed data space that would give cross-border perspective with fact-checking components. And the idea is that end user and journalists could really compare news from across Europe. And we could know the provenance of this news. And we believe that data space could really enable this. The fact checkers could then add and provide their own services and be securely identified and automatically rewarded for that service. And I will present briefly in the next part the European perspective, which is EBU projects doing this. On audience and personalization, we discussed the opportunity of gathering data from all platforms, including social medias, so that we can really measure the success of the content across distribution platforms, across different devices used. And the goal is to be able to identify trends at European level. We would like really to be able also to gather ads performance and perform ads targeting, for example. And the data space in this case would make sure that participants comply with the different regulations in place for using usage and user data, for example, and also facilitate a consolidated consent management that is really a key part of this kind of system for the end consumer in particular. And I think we'll have a presentation from Manu on Drive, which is about this as well. And lastly, on media asset management, so we are first discussing the optimization for content creation and co-production. So a data space in this case could help in right and easy identification and access to assets, such as production sets or virtual background or any files that are needed in the production process, and enable effective data flows across all the stakeholders involved in the supply chain. And the creatives, they could then access more content thanks to a data space in a secured way. They could know the provenance of that, and they could do some automatic right checking on that, etc. And they could also access some services like AI-based technology for virtual reality, 3D, and all that, and so on. And on the B2C side, we also discuss a pan-European on-demand and streaming platform. So with that, we would have a unified search and access to different types of content from any production, creatives, and publishers to any kind of distribution platforms. So the goal of the data space there is really to link the content creators to the end users and automatize the rights and the monetizations, and also leverage some effective recommendation tools that would be also optimized and where we could cooperate to improve. I think we'll have also some presentation later on all these topics. So for all these use cases, as Antoine said, we need to agree on business models, legal framework, data models to be used. We also need to decide on technical solutions for identity management, trusted exchange, and so on. We need trust anchors to ensure that the media companies in the data space are really willing to participate because they really trust each other. Thanks to reliable identity management security. And we need also to make sure that the different rules and policies that are defined by the data owners are enforced. So that could be done thanks to technologies such as smart contracts, but it's also mandatory to have a clear and effective governance with a neutral party in place to do so. So for that, we really need a collective willingness to go forward. So we need to join force to define this data space according to our own rules, and to avoid being blocked by dominant members, for example. So we should really take the opportunity of this ongoing European data strategy to build some consortiums to submit proposal to Digital Europe. So please contact me if you want to join the different discussions that we are having now. And that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Lucille. I don't see any direct questions from the audience, but if there still are questions, just raise them in the chat. In the meantime, Lucille, I think the initiative and the call you are taking is not only for EBU members, but it's for the wide community, I guess, to join the discussion. So everybody who is interested can just contact you. All right, so thanks. So these were two very, very insightful presentations on some general study work that is being done towards the actual realization of a data space for media. So both these groups will be very happy to see also your contribution towards them if you're interested to contribute to this. And now we are going to present a list of projects that are somehow related to data spaces, sharing of data, collaborating on data between and across different organizations. And the first one on the list is Meinolf Ellers from DPA in Germany, who is going to present the DRIVE project for the German publishing sector.
Hi, everyone. So let me go start the presentation here. Okay, so DPA is the German news agency, an international news agency like AFP or Reuters. And what I can share here with Drive is a very concrete experience with a media data space. So if you recall the presentations by Lucille and Audren, so we are in the definitions that Lucille gave, we are working here on audience analysis, BI, and personalization, because we are tackling the most pressing problem for publishers these days, which is growing and raising digital reader revenue and subscriptions. This is a survival question, and maybe that's the reason why we were capable in bringing together now more than 20 publishers from Germany and Austria as partners of Drive. If you recall the definitions by Audren Layeux, we are maybe a combination of a membership model and a subscription model. On the one hand, each publisher, and I can share that here openly, pays a monthly fee of 4,500 euros. This sounds a lot, but if you participate here, you have full access to data tracking. We are tracking all the use of news and information on your sites, and we benchmark it with all the other partners. There is complete transparency in the group. It's absolutely confidential, of course, to the outside. If you join Drive, you don't need to set up your own internal analytics team, because we do it all for you. So how does it work concretely? Oh, Jesus, this is the wrong presentation. Sorry for this. So this is the right one. Mike, is it visible?
Right now, you are not sharing.
Let's see. So now it's there again?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And as I said, the problem is that all the publishers, they are facing the same questions, basically, when it comes to raise reader revenue. And that's the reason why we found an absolute openness to join this initiative and share all the insights and the data. Because the idea is to say, the challenge to raise your digital subscription based on the analytics, what are the best performing contents? How are the users behaving? Who are the loyal users? These are all insights that if you want to translate that into a strategy, it's easier to share these insights and flatten the curve of learning, right? Jesus Christ. So these are these questions here, as you see. Of course, another very, very helpful aspect, and that might be true for all the shared data spaces in the industries, is that you can build giant data pools in order to train your algorithms. As you know, the more data you collect, the more data you have available, the better you can train strong algorithms. And this is exactly what we do. We now have more than 15 billion data points in our database. And here you see how it works. On the left-hand side, you see we implement a very simple open source tracking tool on the websites of all these publishers. And we are tracking two things. One thing are the events. So whenever somebody clicks on a story, reads the story, we are collecting the usage data. How long is this user in the story? What is he consuming? Does he complete the story? These are all the insights that we collect. And besides that, we drag into the database the article information or the picture information, so that we have a combination of event data and content data. This is analyzed with centrally applied algorithms And what we play out and play back to all these publishers are dashboards. Now more than 150 different dashboards that really cover every aspect of analysis. But this is only half of the story. For us, the key success factor for Drive so far has been here on the right-hand side, that we set up a project organization to translate the data and the data analytics into the very, very practical application for the journalists in the newsroom. How can I improve my stories? How can we improve our news offerings? How can we optimize the daily program? And we do this with a newsroom track that now collects or brings together always 100 people from these 25 publishers. We have a sales track and we have a data team, and they closely work together. We have a 2 weeks update call where they all come together and where we simply report about the latest progress and the projects in each of the track teams. And what we also do is, whenever we find something interesting, a trend, an effect whatsoever, we make it an hypothesis and we do experiments and A/B testings to find out more. So in case of an experiment, 2 or 3 or 4 publishers join forces with our central team. We do the A/B testing and then we return to the complete group with the results. What's very, very interesting and what is a very, very positive experience is that together with the group, we defined a central metric. And this could be something that could be a success factor for any kind of shared data space, that you have a key metric that you work on. In our case, it's media time. So it's very easy understandable for journalists in the newsroom compared to conversion numbers or the number of subscriptions that you gained or the reduction of churn rates. These are very complicated and abstract to journalists, but media time is simple. It just says we measure how much user time a certain article, a story is generating. And on the other side, we can measure how much time does a certain user spend on our sites. And we know, and we can really prove it here, that high media time, for instance, on the basis of a single user, directly relates into the possibility that he becomes a subscriber. And if he or she is a subscriber, we know that high media time, high usage directly leads to a reduction of churn rates and high retention. So this is very simple and it helps to improve our performance. These are examples for all the dashboards that we have available. We are now working, and Audrey mentioned that as one of the possible use scenarios, use cases, the adaptive recommendation models. Because one of the key goals of Drive is to help the publishing industry to offer personalized offerings to users as they are used to from Netflix or Spotify or others. So we can't survive with a one-size-fits-all product. We have to personalize and segment what we offer and produce because what we see, not only in the data sounds very simple, but all the users out there are different. And we used to serve them all the same. This is no longer possible. So therefore, our goal, our vision is to use all the insights that we are now gaining with the algorithms and data analytics to build personalization. And this is necessary because what we see there is an 80-20 rule. You see it here in the picture, and it's a slide from Schibsted, the large newspaper group in Norway and Sweden. And what they found out is only 20% of the stories we produce are really driving the traffic or driving the conversions and the subscriptions. 80% are complete underperformers. So what we need to know is what is the success factor for these 20%, and how can we bring more stories here to the upper quadrant? And instead of just 6%, bring this figure to 20 or 30%. And this really leads to very, very significant changes in the newsroom new structures of desks. So there are many, many consequences that come from these insights. And this finally leads to something that is absolutely new for journalism. It means that we not only have to apply data analytics and AI, we have to apply neuroscience as well. Because what we learn, and this is the model of the so-called user needs from the BBC, people have different needs. And for instance, one need they use at the BBC is update me. This is just news and information, but we produce too much of that. This is the 80% problem. Many people are longing for give me a perspective or educate me content. And this is providing context, in depth, long-term stories that help to really orientate yourself in all this permanent flood of headlines. So what we see is the old saying of Aldous Huxley, the world is overused but underinformed, and people are feeling that. It's gaining pain. So we have to help them, to give them orientation, but this needs to, or leads to big consequences and changes in the newsroom. So we will be happy to be an active provider and partner in an upcoming consortium, because as I said, what we learned is what you need to have people sharing, build a strong trust basis, and allow complete transparency and exchange in order to learn from each other. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Meinolf, for this insightful presentation and very interesting projects you are doing in Germany. I don't see any immediate questions in the chat. Of course, for the audience, you can still raise them and I will address them to the speakers as we go. In the meantime, as we are slightly in delay with the schedule, I propose to immediately switch to the next speaker, which is Lucille Verbaere from the EBU again, but now on a concrete EBU project for trustworthy news.
Hello again, everybody. Let me share the screen again. Okay, so yeah, the European Perspective is basically a project set up by EBU with around 10 broadcasters now across Europe, from Belgium, Finland, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, etc. And the vision is really to create a networked pan-European newsroom with public service values in order to forge better understanding between the Europeans. And how do we do that? We want to exchange and share online trustworthy and independent news to the audience in their own language, and also to innovate together while listening to the audience. So it's a project that has been made possible through a grant from the EC in the context of Multimedia Actions program, and it's co-funded by the EBU. I can show a quick video to explain better.
You are not sharing your screen, Lucille, at the moment.
I'm not showing at all?
No.
Oh. Okay, sorry for that. Let me step up the screen first. Okay, so you should see something now.
Yes.
It's going. I don't know why full screen is not working. Can you hear something?
No, there is no audio, but we can see the video.
I'm not sure why. Well, let's do it without the video then. Okay, so sorry for the sound that is missing. I switch back to the presentation. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so as I said, we are now, it's a collaborative also news service where journalists can share their stories in the digital news hub. It is then translated into many languages using Eurovax, and then the editors can select the most relevant stories for their audience. And this is powered by a recommendation tool that has been developed by EBU called Peach. And the goal is really to foster collaboration, discussions, and give a cross-cultural perspective. And then they publish them on their website and apps to give a fresh insight on pan-European topics to their audience. And here you can see a screenshot of the of this digital news hub. So it's a kind of B2B platform for journalists. So they can select the source, the language of the different news items. They can search some topics, and then they have all the different news items that correspond to their search there. And you have, of course, as you see, some audio files, some text only, or some videos. And then they are translated. So here you can see RTP in Portugal has published this news item. It has been translated in English by Eurovax, and you can request another language if you wish. So here I requested Swedish. It is then translated using a different translator tool that are integrated in Eurovax, and you can even edit the translation to improve it if you wish. And then you can also, if it's a video, have all the transcription done in a video. I was planning to do a video, but I think we are, sorry, to do a demo, but I think we are running a bit out of time there. What are the next steps? So we want to include more source, more formats in the platform. We want to look at the impact on the audience and how we could use the fact-checking networks to add some new source and some new services. And we are also working on the technology behind it, of course, to improve the translation, the recommendations, and all that is based on algorithms that are open source and really open to avoid any bias and in line with the public sector values. In terms of governance, so it's a consortium-led initiative with each participant that nominates a representative to discuss the roadmap, the different building blocks of a platform. In terms of legal framework, so there are some agreements that are signed by the participants, and they commit to publish, to provide a certain number of news items. They agree to publish on their website to their audience a given number of publication from the other participants. So there are the kind of agreements that are in place. But all that relies, of course, on trust. Trust between the participants that are really organizations from the public sector media that provides news that are fact-checked, and so we can trust also the content that is exchanged there. And that's it from me. If you have any questions, please contact us on this initiative.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucille. We are indeed a little bit behind schedule. I also don't see any immediate questions, so let's continue to the next speaker, which is Nikos Saris from ATC and CERT, who is going to talk about EDMO, the European Digital Media Observatory.
Hello from me as well. I imagine you can see the right screen and you can hear me well.
Yes.
I hope. Okay, thank you. So I'm here to share some information about relevant activities of EDMO, the European Digital Media Observatory. EDMO is the main effort of the European Commission to organize activities against disinformation on a multinational and national level. EDMO has several activities structured around 4 tasks, but here I will only focus on those that have to do with repositories, data, and efforts that can help in the context of a data space, as the one, a media data space as the one we are discussing here. So I'll walk you through some repositories we have created that can be interesting in this context. The first one is a repository of fact-checking initiatives. There was an extensive study of all the fact-checking initiatives in Europe and the UK. These were mapped. All this is available publicly, of course, and on the website, through the website of EDMO, edmo.eu. There is a map there, interactive map, where you can see on every country the activities, the initiatives on fact-checking that answer some specific criteria, which are also explained in this section. There is a table which provides more information. It is searchable and one can find more information about all those initiatives. And there is an editorial section that provides more extended information about some of these initiatives that have agreed to provide such information. Further than this, we have created a repository of research activities, Europe, but also worldwide. These are academic activities studying this information. And again, we have organized that through a visualization of an interactive map with names and locations of all these relevant organizations, which is it's a sortable and there's a sortable and searchable table, which can also be downloaded in a tabular format so that it can be can be researched further, and there is also a publication which explains the whole process that was followed to gather all this information. The third repository is one of scientific publications, again in the area of disinformation, and again the whole process is described, and all the information is searchable and downloadable. Now, EDMO is not only the central project that was initiated a couple of years ago and will go on through its continuation next year. It's also the hubs, and there are currently 8 hubs covering either one or more than one nation, and those organize more local activities and more practical activities around countering disinformation. They produce daily fact checks. Every EDMO hub is contractually obliged to provide a number of daily fact checks and investigations usually in the language of the country. And all that information, all that process is coordinated by EDMO, and all that information is gathered and is made available through the collaborative platform and environment that is provided by EDMO to all its members and all the hubs, where one can have access and explore all this information coming from the hubs. And apart from the hubs, there are 2 communities. One community that is already operational, which includes fact-checking organizations all over Europe, and there is a process of any fact-checker applying, and if they meet a set of defined criteria and public criteria, they are accepted in this community, which numbers now more than 35 members. So it is a quite wide effort, European effort, which covers the whole of Europe. And this community also has its space in this collaborative platform, where they work together and produce collaborative investigations, which are published under the website of EDMO. And apart from this data, which are the fact checks of the EDMO hubs, we are also indexing fact checks coming from any fact-checking organizations, a great number of fact-checking organizations, not only in Europe, but also worldwide. And there is also a search interface which allows the collaborators, the investigators that work in this environment to discover and use this information in their research and investigation. So these are the relevant activities on EDMO and the relevant data that is provided by EDMO, gathered and provided. Some are openly available, some are restricted within the environment of the communities of EDMO. And in this context, it could be a very significant player in a media data space in the area that has to do with fact-checking and counter disinformation activities. This is all from me. Open to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Nikos. I don't see any immediate questions, but I can maybe comment from our side as VRT also has a newsroom. We are part of one of these local EDMO hubs as well. And we see a lot of requests from the newsroom to have better systems to collaborate on fact checks, on disinformation, to see what's happening all across Europe. How far are you with rolling out something concrete that can really be used pan-European between partners that want to collaborate?
The mechanism is already there, and the output from 4 of the 8 hubs are already indexed and available under the collaborative environment. And we're expecting also the output from the other 4 hubs. And around September or October, we will have the results also for the rest of the hubs. So by the end of the year, we will have hubs covering the whole area of Europe, so that this will be even more valuable, and the data that will be provided will be even more valuable for everyone.
All right, great. Very happy to see to follow up on this very interesting initiative also from our side. So now I think it's time to switch to the next speaker. So next in the lineup is Robin Rybak from Swiss Text, Swiss Public Television, who is going to talk about the Mediaverse project for helping creators to produce and share state-of-the-art media.
Thank you, Mike. I hope my audio and everything is working, so I'll just continue. Hi, everybody. My name again is Robin Rybak. I'm head of innovation management at Swiss Text. Swiss Text is the operational part of the SRG, so the Swiss Public Broadcaster, as Mike already said. I'll present the Mediaverse project, which is an EU project. If you had the chance, you might have already have more details from the MDM yesterday, where Nikos, who's also just presented, digged into everything in more detail. Coming to the project, it's a next generation media project with 3 years duration, and we are about midterm. We have, let's say, considerably normal number of partners with 11 now. And of course, you can have more information on the project side. The whole vision of Mediaverse was to set up a decentralized network of digital asset management systems that interact as nodes. The overall idea is to allow professionals and non-professionals in the national node environment to publish multimedia content and also share and license that. And this is true for professionals and not professionals. And on the other side, we also seek into providing user experience on the other side of the users of the node. The Mediaverse system itself contains of nodes that could be nodes at the broadcaster, but could of course be a conglomerate of broadcasters nodes and private media house nodes, or could be reflecting a country. And then it should, by using many nodes, become more performant and more sustainable in terms of availability and so on in the whole environment. You can see this Mediaverse network as a network of data spaces as well. When you zoom into a node, then the node will have access to various backend services, and these could, of course, be also Gaia X reflected services or public cloud services, but they're all following a general idea that they will generate metadata that is hosted and presented in the node. The APIs are the general framework that offers the access to the backend services, and all is controlled by blockchain, which is used as a trusted ledger. So it's not about payment per se, but to put in a ledger all the transactions. Then all this metadata is based on EBU and EBU screen as an metadata model, and we call it Mediaverse Core system that deals with it. We built several systems and services ourselves to prove that the back end and the front end nodes can work together. I'll not go into detail here, but we basically have several sets, one of which is AI-based media annotation that provides object detection, captioning, mem detection, and so on in the video area, action recognition, and so on. also in 3D elements, multi-view object detection, in a text environment named entity recognition. But of course, this list could be without an end, or could be added by any EBU service or any other project service that's available. So if you would want to build a node, you're welcome. And then of course, you're also welcome to connect your own services to it. Then there is a accessibility tool set, which basically provides a core idea of having multilingual translated media content. But of course, this could also be a Eurovox service connected to the platform via an API. There are several use cases to prove the idea of the decentralized node network, which basically consists of 3 ideas, one of which is the citizen journalism, which we as SRG and Deutsche Welle will look into. And then we have new ideas of formats and co-creation in the media, which will be performed by UAB from Catalan. And then there are more experimental services on the artwork side, which then also look into how other forms of media can be used in such an environment. Just shortly looking into the citizen journalism, it's basically the idea to prove the network in an end-to-end workflow, which is again based on blockchain, but here we use the blockchain to anonymize the author, but still be sure that it's trustful, so that reflects things of what we've heard before. We also look into using the node as a type of a visible platform at the moment. The whole idea is that a journalist or a citizen journalist can contribute content in a secure way, which is of course more important than ever. But this is true for every year I talk about it. And then the curation is happening in a decentralized application environment on the broadcaster side or the media house side. And the whole workflow is enhanced via 3D immersive experiment tools, which is specifically looked into by Deutsche Welle. And we also provide an app that supports the recording of video and provides the wallet as well. And to give you an idea how we market it, I'll just start a video on it, and then I sum up. Yeah, and as just said, there are several links that you can follow up. So I very much would encourage you, if you're more interested to know about the project, to use the first link. But of course, you're also welcome to set up your own Mediaverse node. And if you want to do it more on a face-to-face basis, you can connect us at SRG as well. Thanks a lot, and I hand over back to Mike.
All right. Thanks a lot, Robin, for this very insightful presentation. I don't see any immediate questions from the audience. So just again, for people who only recently joined, we are taking questions through the chat function on the B2Match platform. So if you have a question that you want to address to any of the speakers today, please put it there, and then I will bring it forward to the speakers. In the meantime, let's move on as we are on this tight schedule today. So the next speaker we have lined up is Hans-Nicolas Locher, I think from CST, who is going to present the TAMIS metadata projects for securely sharing data in a production supply chain using decentralized architecture. Hello, Hans-Nicolas.
Yes. So good afternoon to everyone. Do you see my screen?
We do, yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Hans-Nicolas Locher from CST. I'm Director of Development. CST is a non-profit association of cinema technicians. So I will speak about this project, TAMIS. So TAMIS stands for Traceability Audiovisual Metadata Distributed and Secured. So the observation we have done is that there is some confusion in the distribution chain on the contents, on the version of the contents, on the validation of the contents. So we do collect some constatation. First, an obvious one, digital deliveries are increasing. What was very the start of this project was the consideration that unique registrations such as ISAN or IDA immatriculation are not widespread. We see that metadata are not shared enough. Two examples of this, for instance, description of movies are pretty much reinvented at each stage of the distribution. So archivists have own resume, and broadcaster have another. So we can see that sometimes the location of assets are not certain, and correlated to this, multiple copies and multiple useless copies are done. So what we want to make is to enhance the productivity with a smoother metadata circulation process within the content distribution. On a secondary target that we expect from this first one is to optimize the material produced and exchange between the member of the fabrication chain. So what do we want to do? We want to build a technical architecture for audiovisual metadata exchange. We want it to be decentralized. So that's very important, and that's why we have this picture without everyone in the center, but the standards we want to create. We want it reliable and secure, and we want it based on open and approved standards. So the technology we plan to use, the first one is Solid. So Solid is a technical stack, so to say, based on web components. That's the Tim Berners-Lee contribution to the Web3 initiative. The idea is to decentralize the web again, to have the user taking control again. So each hexagon here represent data from a user, and the consultation of this data are done directly by the other users. But of course, this decentralized system is use some security breaks to avoid that everyone access to everything. So there are some security mechanism provided. And this web ID is very important because it's a way of designing a unique resource in this system. So what I said is that RESTful services are structured in RDF. So we are studying currently the sector ontologies already existing. So of course, EBU CCDM, that was our first choice. We have some parts missing in EBU, so we will need some complement. We are looking at MDDF too, because it's a very, very interesting approach with different level of granularity. But for now, we are working with EBU CCDM to model the business use cases. So the idea is to have all the providers of the deliverable fabrication chain, and of course, on a particular work, only certain of them will be involved, and the other will not see the private information on the building of the deliverables. So I didn't speak about Aizen because I believe I had only 5 minutes, but I can go back to that if some people have questions. So in each case, each provider has a server, a solid server. It's a node, it's a data node. On the TMI standard will be the glue between them to exchange data. So we are currently looking for indexing mechanisms that can be helpful to bootstrap in the TMI circle for a new incomer. So the current project is TMIS 1. It finished in few weeks, end of June, and the deliverables of this project are the formalization of the business use cases. The principal part is technical feasibility study and requirement specification. So this will be the main document for preparing TMIS 2 that you see below. We will have a report on energy consumption reduction evaluation. That's a very tricky part, to be honest. And analysis of the added value for the actors in the chain evaluation. And first governance model for the incoming actors. So, and we are preparing a proof of concept in TMIS 2 with few participants. So the definition of this is involving each day, but we will have probably 3 use cases on metadata exchanges with metadata exchanges in each case. So the participant of the group, so CSC, which is the main stakeholder today, with a partner Media.io, now renamed Luminvent, Starting Blocks, which is involved in the semantic web already, and Media Digital Nutty, where Xavier comes from, and which is a project leader. And we have a few sponsors too. So FICAM, which is a French federation for multimedia, cinema, and broadcasts. ISAN, which is a immatriculation provider alongside with IDA. Cap Digital, which is a French incubator for media. Tetrafilm, a laboratory, and the ProCirep, which is a representative of producer of cinema and television production. So it was brief, but I targeted my presentation for 5 minutes, so maybe we can gain a few minutes, but I have time for question maybe, if you have some.
Right, thank you very much, Hans-Nicolas. I don't see any questions from the audience in the chat, but I'm sure that people can either contact you or they can still pose their question in the chat during this session, and then we will address it at the end of the session. In the meantime, I think we can indeed gain some time by going to the next speaker, who is Alexandre Le Forestier from Panodyssey, who is going to give a presentation on the CREA projects to co-create, publish, and monetize quality content.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your attention. So I am Alexandre Le Forestier from Panodyssey as a founder. And I founded the Creative Room European Alliance, a European consortium. So first of all, what is Panodyssey? Panodyssey is a social network dedicated to creative writings. So as a writer, I can use a collaborative editor to write and to co-write with a translator, with a corrector, with an illustrator. After that, I can publish my content in my own creative room. The creative room is a space of the creativity with a topic, with a business model. I can publish for free, or I can publish to get the money. In this case, I can set a prime offer. I set the price of my subscription offer. After that, I diffuse my content in Panodyssey and outside of Panodyssey. As a reader, what is the user experience we propose? As a reader, I use a social network dedicated to writings about news, information, about narration, stories, fan fiction. I can set my own algorithm in full transparency. On Panodyssey, no fake. No fake news, no fake no fake view, no fake money. As a writer, when I want to publish the first time on Panodyssey, I certify my identity. When I certify my identity, in fact, I protect my intellectual property in my own registered IP. We manage it via a smart contract IP. I can open in one click my wallet to collect the money directly from the public. So we developed this project 3 years ago. And the first thing we did 3 years, I present with no money, with no team, with no product, this vision of the social network at the European Commission. To explain, we can imagine a new economical model, a new European model to protect the citizen, of course, but to protect the writers, the creative content. It is the reason why we explain during 3 years, we need some help from the European Commission. We need to support the copyright. We need to support the GDPR. We need to support the Digital Services Act to create some different alternatives in this numerical ecosystem. And I am happy to announce we are now supported by the European Commission via the Creative Europe program, Lab Innovation, and we created a European consortium called Creative Room European Alliance with 9 partners with 20 sectorial views in audiovisual and media industry, cultural industry, publishing, innovation, of course, in 5 countries, in Italy, 3 in France, and thanks to Cap Digital to onboard in this kind of European consortium, in Bulgaria and in Hungary. Each partner set the vision, the vision of usage they need to professionalize, in fact, the social network with a professional view. Then they communicate, disseminate this vision and this product in each countries, each network. And today we are at the Cap Digital event for the General Assembly, and it is the reason why I am here. Then at the end of this week, we'll present the Creative Room European Alliance in Madrid for the Madrid Fair Book in the different sector, publishing sector. So this Creative Room European Alliance is an open consortium. We have 9 founders, of course. Then and this point is very important for us. We want to onboard new partners with special status, the associated status, to build together and to design together what kind of numerical space we want in Europe, and integrated the different rules, the new European rules in Europe, and to build it and to create a new economical model with this kind of innovation, this kind of diversity, and this kind of languages and culture. I don't know if you have some question about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexander, for this overview. Yeah, one immediate question: do you have a pointer where interested people can find more information, or some document you can share that we can make available to the audience?
Yes, of course. In fact, go to panodici.com and follow the Creative Room European Alliance profile. If you tap Alexandre Le Forestier, you will see how the official Creative Room of the consortium. I am really sorry, but I am on the event today physically at Cap Digital, and the condition is not are not good to provide a PowerPoint or something like that. I can send. I send you the link in the chat.
Yeah, okay. I will copy that into the chat for the participants of this session, yes. So they can so they have a pointer for more information on this initiative.
I do it now. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, then I think it's time to go to the final speaker of today's session, which is Jérôme Battistelli from Monarch, who is going to talk about the IWA project for managing digital twins of architectural heritage, sensitive natural sites, and remarkable objects. So,
yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for hosting this presentation today. My presentation will be a little bit different. I don't have slides, I'm sorry, but I will show you our website and then a little video to explain what we create and what we are working on about the project. So we are... yeah.
If you also want to share the audio, make sure that the computer audio next to the microphone.
Yeah, there's no audio in the
video,
no so that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I share my screen. So we are a digital twin agency, a company who creates digital assets for cultural and creative industries and companies. So we use different technologies such as LiDAR and photogrammetry tools to build virtual sets. So here are some images that you can see on our website. It's a bit different than the digital twins you may be familiar with, because it's more about graphic digital twins. I mean, it's more visual because it's for the film industry. I mean, visual effects and gaming or scenography 3D models. So it's not a real-time system to analyze and that you can find it in the smart cities. So it's a bit different than this, but it's for the film industry and also we have some clients for the fashion shows and video mapping scenographies on the buildings. So here are some examples. And I'll also will show you a little video. So as I said, we use LiDAR and photogrammetry to create these virtual sets. And the project IWA is interoperability within the ARC. It's more about how to teach to the owners, to the people who manage these beautiful places here in France and in Europe, all around the world too. How homes and manage their digital contents, and because we have a lot of example to explain that sometimes you work on a project and the data are lost or can be reused because of the rights of the 3D assets are not belonging to the owners of the different places. So you have to work again on the 3D scans, and also we have huge data sets to share, and that's a problem because people, they don't know how to share this kind of files, and we are working with them to explain how we can share this data. And also we are looking for some partners. So as you can see, we are working on the point clouds with real aesthetic. As you can see, some lights and like an artistic point of view, but we are also working on photorealistic renders. So you have many options to work on digital twins and visual digital twins, as you can see in this example. And also, as I said, yes, we are working with the owners to build these data sets, and also working on blockchain services to share this data and with the clients and the owners, and also about the royalties and all the system. We have to work on it, but these are some examples we are working on. And we are not familiar with we are not data specialists, and we are still working on a white paper for the 3D scans, because as I said, we are working with different industries. I mean, the film industries, the gaming industries, also cultural heritage. I mean, sometimes people from the cultural heritage, architects and archaeologists, they don't have the budget to do some 3D scans. So we can share also our data from the artistic projects to them, because the data are quite the same sometimes. So we are working on that, and yes, we are looking for a data specialist to help us working on different solutions to share for the the owners, but also the clients, all this data, and that's a high, really tough project. Yes. So here is a contact address, also my number. If you want to share, to send us questions or anything else, make sure it's quite free. And if you have any question, I will answer you. No problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Jérôme, for this very interesting and well, looks spectacular.
I hope everything was clear.
this project.
It's quite different because I'm not working on the data sets and we are looking for partners to this project.
Yeah, would be my question. Who are you mainly collaborating with now to realize this, to get hands on the data? Are you doing everything yourself, or do you have a network of partners already with whom you're realizing this?
No, all you saw, it's from our company, it's Monarch, and but we are also working with different partners, especially on blockchains. But it's not the agreement is still on on the table, so I can tell you yet. But yeah, that's a very large part of the project, and also we are working on sound, because it's you know, as a virtual reality projects, we also care a lot about sounds because it's audiovisual projects. So we also are working on the we say the acoustic prints of the place to get a realistic sound from virtual reality places we scan. So this is another part of the project, and another partner because I don't work on the sound part. Yes, so that's it.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. I don't see any immediate questions from the audience, and then we're almost at the end of this session. But there is one question wrapping up everything that we have seen today. One question I have, a big question actually. As we have seen towards the realization of a media data space, the number of potential applications for sharing data within a media context is huge. So the opportunities for media data space are certainly there. But as we see from the diversity of the cases that are on the table here, somehow in the realization of a data space, we have to prioritize. And as I see it with the multiplexity of all the different applications, for media, it turns out it might be more complex than it is for other domains like energy or mobility, or where data is more managed in a structural way. Do any of the speakers here have any views on how we should take this in hand, and how we can, for instance, prioritize the cases that we build or that we tackle first when we realize this data space in the future? Sure. I see Meinhof wants to address the question, so please go.
Yes, as far as I understand the motivations of the Commission here, I guess part of the overall motivation is to contribute to a greater sovereignty and independence from the GAFA platforms. I personally would feel that it could make a lot of sense if we find a scenario that would cover the interest of the entire or a large group or part of the European media industry. I mean, when we have many, I guess the big split, for instance, when we talk about news and information, is always between publishers and broadcasters, between private and public. And I guess it would be smart to bridge and overcome this split and this segmentation. I guess we are, as a European media industry, we wouldn't be smart if we would compete in this process and again would manifest the segmentation and the split in the media space in Europe. So that would be my personal opinion here, without saying which should be first or second. But I guess if it's once again a scenario that would only serve part of the European media industry and would manifest the split, I guess it would be a disadvantage.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else who wants to say a few words on this challenge?
Yeah, I can say a few words perhaps. So I think building a data space, you have some transversal needs, and perhaps we should address this first. We can see that there are some technical building blocks, and even soft building blocks like governance or things like that needs to be put in place. And yes, of course, after that, we have a multitude of use cases with some specific requirements for each that should perhaps be taken care of separately for each initiative. But my understanding is that the first step is really to put in place the frame that would allow the use cases then to develop, and then for each use cases, one of the key learnings we had from our discussion is that we should really start small. So, for example, with a given type of content or type of data in a perhaps one area in Europe, because then you have some questions around right management, different formats that complicates everything. So, so yeah, the idea would be really to start small for each of the use cases. But that would be anyway on top of a, I call it, I don't know, the generic frame that really enables everything and make sure that everybody interoperates. So building blocks like everything that makes sure that identity management is taken care of, that trust is there for the different transactions. This is really the main part I think we should first focus on, my guess.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucille. I don't see anyone else that wants to intervene here, so then I think it's time to wrap up this session. So I want to thank all the speakers for the very insightful presentations. We will share the presentations afterwards and the recordings of the session, so you can watch them again. You can have the contacts for each of the speakers if you're interested to engage with, for instance, the EBU or the Media Data Space Consortium initiatives. They will be happy to take you on board. I also want to thank the audience for following this session, and I'm looking forward with all of you to construct this media data space together in the near future. Have a nice day, everyone, and enjoy the data week.